Hi, I'm Kenzie. Welcome back to my podcast. If you're just joining, welcome. Today we will be talking about my 27th Blue's Clues VHS, Blue's First Holiday. This VHS includes Blue's First Holiday and Joe's Surprise Party. First, let's talk about Blue's First Holiday. This episode starts out with Joe and Blue wishing the viewer happy holidays because it was obviously the holidays. Blue gives the viewer a happy holidays picture that she and Joe made. Then it was time to open a present from Mr. Salt and Mrs. Pepper. The present showed 2 movies that Mr. Salt and Mrs. Pepper made a long time ago. Everyone wanted to watch them. The first movie was about when everyone were babies and when Steve was little. There was one part where Joe said that he still has the duck blanket from when he was a baby. He brought it out to show everybody. Then the movie continued. They noticed that Blue wasn't in the movie. Mr. Salt assured them that Blue would come later in the movie. It turned out this was the story of the day they met Blue. The story starts out as a cold and snowy morning. It was present time. Joe's present was a duck blanket. Slippery Soap's present was a bubble wand, in which he blew his very first bubble. Tickety Tock's present was a pair of blocks, which she loved to count. Shovel and Pail's presents were stuffed toy animals. Side Table Drawer's present was her very first telephone. Steve didn't get his present yet, but he knew exactly what he wanted. He loved puppies, but he never had a real one, and that's what he wanted more than anything. Then something came in the mail. Mailbox gave Steve a present for him. The present was a book called About a Puppy. Steve read it to everybody. He loved it so much that he read it over and over again. There was this one brief scene where he even read it in the bathroom while he was brushing his teeth. Then Steve read it one more time just before bed. The next day, while Steve was still sleeping, something magical happened. Blue came to life and skidooed out of the book. That was her first skidoo ever. When Steve went to check the book, he realized the blue puppy was not there. It turned out Blue came out of the book because she wanted to play. So she and Steve did. They had a puppet show together, ate lunch together, brushed their teeth together, and even played hide and seek together. They had so much fun that Steve wanted Blue to stay. She put away the book because she did not have to go back in it. Blue was here to stay. And that's the story of the day they met Blue. After the movie, everyone was amazed. Then the phone rang. It was Steve calling all the way from college. What a nice surprise that was. Joe and Blue talked to him about how they watched him in the movie, but he was little. Then Steve talked to the viewer. After talking to Steve, it's mail time. In the holiday card, our friends were celebrating different holidays: Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, Christmas, and Ramadan. After saying goodbye, Joe went to watch the next movie with his friends. The next movie was called Blue's First Clue, which tells the story about the first time they ever played Blue's Clues. This story starts out with everyone playing in the snow. Shovel and Pail made a snowman. Slippery and Tickety made prints in the snow. Blue and Steve sledded down a little hill. Joe was happy just to sit in the snow. Later that day, it was nap time. But there was one problem. Joe didn't have his duck blanket with him, so everyone tried to find it. They looked everywhere, behind the thinking chair, inside the toy chest, and even under Steve's bed. No one knew where the blanket was, except for Blue. She wanted to tell everyone where the blanket was, but she didn't know how to say it. So she left a clue to where Joe's blanket was. And that's when the first game of Blue's Clues has begun. The first clue was circles. Steve went to get his handy-dandy notebook so he could write it down and not forget it. Blue said there were 3 clues to find. The second clue was a carrot. The third clue was snow. After finding the third clue, Steve went to sit in the thinking chair to think. He was trying to figure out where Joe's blanket was, and our clues were circles, a carrot, and snow. He thought that Joe's blanket was by the snowman. That was the answer to Blue's Clues. So Steve and Blue went outside to get the blanket. Then they went back inside to dry it. After that, they gave the blanket to Joe so everyone could take their naps. And that's how the story ends. After the second movie, everyone thought it was a great story. Joe even thanked Blue for finding his duck blanket. Thanks to her, he still has it today. Then Blue went to check outside. It was snowing just like it did on their first holiday together. Everyone went outside. Shovel and Pail made a snowman. Slippery and Tickety made prints in the snow. Joe and Blue sledded down a hill. After a fun day of watching movies, it was time to say so long, but sing just one more song. Now let's talk about the episode as a whole. I feel like kids can learn a lot if they want to learn about, well, everyone's backstories. Seeing them as babies and Steve when he was little made me think about Blue's Clues in a totally different way. Instead of the traditional game playing, we get a glimpse of the past, which is really cool. I like thinking of the past sometimes. Brings back so many memories. All in all, it's a good episode. Now let's talk about Joe's surprise party. This episode starts out with Joe telling us that today was his birthday. Then Mailbox wanted him outside for something. Blue called her friends over. Tickety Tock, Periwinkle, Mr. Salt, and the rest of the gang were getting ready for Joe's surprise party. The thing was, Joe doesn't know about the surprise party, and it needed to be kept a secret until everyone was finished getting ready. Mr. Salt thought that he had everything planned, but Blue didn't think so. The question was, what else does everyone need to do to finish getting ready for the surprise party? That's when Blue wanted to play Blue's Clues, but first Tickety made the pauper vanish by ringing her alarm bells really loud. So Mr. Salt went to get the handy-dandy notebook. Side Table Drawer promised not to tell Joe about the surprise party, and so the game Blue's Clues has begun. The viewer spotted the first clue, which is tape. Tickety drew it in the notebook. After the first clue was found, Mr. Salt needed help in the kitchen. As he was carrying so many hats, Joe told us that he was still outside with Mailbox, but it was still his birthday. Mr. Salt closed the window by pulling down the blind, so Joe doesn't see everything inside. Then he set out the 10 hats. Then Periwinkle needed help setting the plates. The plates were green and orange, 2 of Joe's favorite colors. We put them in a pattern. Then Mrs. Pepper needed help with a cake. She just needed to add a candle with the most squares on it. After the cake was complete, Slippery Soap showed us Joe's present that they made for him. It was a game called Pin the Beak on the Duck. The viewer spotted the second clue, which is Joe's present. Slippery drew it in the notebook. After the second clue was found, Joe was wondering where everyone was. Mr. Salt told Blue and the viewer to make sure Joe stays outside. Mailbox helped too by telling him he could get the mail instead. Great idea. I mean, it was mail time after all. Mailbox had a very special birthday letter for the birthday boy. In the letter, our friends were wishing Joe a happy birthday. What a nice letter that was. After saying goodbye, Shovel and Pail needed Joe in the garden. Really, they were just trying to keep Joe outside so he doesn't see the surprise party. Then Periwinkle enters the scene to show us the decorations. That's when the viewer spotted the third clue, which is wrapping paper. Periwinkle drew it in the notebook. That's when Tickety, Slippery, and Periwinkle realized we had all 3 clues, and it was time to sit in the thinking chair. It was time to think. We were trying to figure out what we need to do to finish getting ready for Joe's surprise party, and our clues were tape, Joe's present, and wrapping paper. They thought, what if we used the wrapping paper to put around Joe's present, and then they could use the tape to tape it up. The viewer guessed correctly that we need to wrap Joe's present to finish getting ready for the surprise party. At that point, Tickety, Slippery, and Periwinkle realized we just figured out Blue's clues. After the celebratory song, Blue, Tickety, Slippery, Periwinkle, and the viewer wrapped Joe's present. Then Periwinkle and the viewer called to Joe to come inside. It was time to surprise Joe. Joe came inside, Blue turned on the light, and everyone yelled, "Surprise!" Joe couldn't believe it. He felt so surprised and so special. He opened the present and we played the game with him. Joe won. Then it was time for cake. Joe blew out the candle with a little help from the viewer, of course. After a fun surprise party, it was time for So Long, but sing just one more song. Now let's talk about the episode as a whole. I feel like kids can learn a lot if they want to learn about making someone happy with a surprise party and making things being kept secret until things are ready. Surprise parties are fun. I love them. All in all, it's a good episode. So yeah, that's Blue's first holiday. If you would like to play again, just go back to the beginning. And remember, you can do anything that you want to do. Bye!